When you're building a small solar setup, you need a solar charge controller, you need a way to charge your batteries via AC when you need to, you need an AC inverter, you need a bunch of breakers, and a lot of cabling. And that stuff can really add up. What if I told you there was an easier way? What if I told you you could do it with an all-in-one box? This is the SunGold 3000 watt 24 volt hybrid all-in-one charger inverter. That's a mouthful. Let's get into it. All right, before we go get some hands-on with this product and find out how it installs and what the user experience is like and some of the other cool features, and then we'll also take a look at the app because that is also pretty neat. We're going to kind of just do a quick flyby of some of the basic facts that you might want to be aware of. So first of all, let's talk about price. This product is priced at $595, and it is actually less expensive by about $300 less expensive than a comparably equipped modular system that you have to assemble yourself. And for $150 more than $595, you can get their upgraded 5,000 watt inverter system. Now, as I mentioned, this is a 3,000 watt inverter system, a 24 volt system as well. It has a charger in it that is configurable up to 40 amps to charge up to 40 amps. And the solar charge controller is a 60 amp solar charge controller, and it's capable of taking up to 1,400 watts of solar. Now, it also has a dry node contact feature that you can wire a generator to, a compatible generator that will allow you to auto start that generator if a low voltage disconnect set point is met off the batteries. So the generator can kick in and provide power and recharge the batteries if you need it to be able to do that automatically and maybe you don't have grid power. But you can also do that with grid power, which is also very cool. And speaking of that, there are several selectable operation modes. So there are two fundamental modes. There's the charging mode, and then there's the output or discharge mode. And there are a variety of configurations that you can select in the menu for both of those modes. So for example, on the charging mode, you can have it prioritize your solar input for charging and only go to grid power if the solar input is not sufficient. Or you could have it prioritize the grid charging and have solar kick in only if the grid goes down. Now, there are 4 selections for the output mode as well. And the one I typically like to use is the one that is inverter priority. So it'll run off battery power until I hit a low voltage set point, and then it will kick in the grid power to recharge the batteries and run any loads that happen to be running at the time. But you can also use what they call grid priority, which basically will run like a UPS backup system. So it'll always run bypass power through the grid, and then it'll switch to inverter within 10 milliseconds if the grid power goes down. And we're going to take a look at that in a minute and see if that actually does work like a UPS. Now, it does also have an optional Wi-Fi module, which you can connect to the RS485 port on the bottom, and that allows you to connect it to your home Wi-Fi, and then you can use an app that's called Smart ESS or Smart S. Anyway, let's go look at what the installation process looks like, and then in the course of that, we'll talk about how to set up the Wi-Fi and get the app working and all that sort of stuff. All right, as you can see, I've got the SunGold 3000 watt inverter partially installed. So I've got it mounted to the wall. Now this cable here is basically a computer cable that I just cut the end off of, and then I put ferrules on the end of the wires. I'll give you a close-up of that so you can see it made it easier to do the wiring into these terminals. And then I also have wired a 2-gang outlet here because it does not have pre-wired AC outlets. So if you want grid power, you wire that here on these 3 terminals on the left. And then if you need to wire external AC outlets, which undoubtedly you would in most cases, you could install that somewhere nearby, and then you can wire that to here, or you can wire that to the panel if you want to power certain circuits through breakers and things like that. Now over here we have our solar connection, which I have wired to my solar panels here. So I've terminated those as MC4s and wired those directly right into there. And then in the middle here is the plus and minus main battery connections. So those are going to come out and plug into this, which is a 160 amp DC breaker. Now this is a monstrosity, but this is what SunGoldPower actually recommended in their manual. So I went ahead and bought one. But as you can see, it is a beast. And that switch takes quite a bit of effort to close, but this is specially designed for high current DC loads. So I'm going to bring the two battery connections into here, and then on the other side of this, these will actually go out to my battery bank, which is going to have to be at least two 12-volt batteries, because this is a 24-volt all-in-one inverter charger. So I need at least two 12-volt batteries to create a 24-volt battery bank. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm going to go ahead and create the cables that are remaining for the battery connectors here on the inverter to the breaker box here. And then I'm going to create the cables to go from this side to the battery bank. So I'm going to go ahead and get that done. All right, now that I've got this wired up, I got to do the other side of this and make cables that are appropriate for the battery. All right, I got everything all wired up. You can see I've got my two Power Queen batteries right here wired in series. So that means I've got the positive and the negative connected on one side to each battery, and then I've got a smart shunt right here from Victron, and that is connected to my negative lead, and then I've got a little positive lead coming over here to the positive side, and that gives my smart shunt power and allows me to monitor all of the power in and out of the battery bank. And I've got my main leads off the batteries going into here. As you can see, this is that massive 160 amp DC breaker, and then those go on up here into the main connectors in the SunGoldPower 3000 watt inverter. And then I lastly have my Wi-Fi module right here. I guess that's the next thing to do, is see if we can connect the Wi-Fi module. So let's see how that works. It's actually not that complicated, but I have to admit the instructions feel like they leave a bunch of steps out. So it can very easily be confusing because some of the steps don't happen right after you think they should, and patience ends up being what wins the day. Now, as I do this, I'll put my phone screen up here so you can see what I'm doing and how it interacts with the Wi-Fi module. And you just really, the first prerequisite is obviously you have to have power to the unit, and you have to have the Wi-Fi module plugged into the bottom. So you should at least see a status light on there indicating that it's got power. Now mine's already been set up, so you saw all four lights, but when you're first setting it up, you'll only see one or two lights until it's fully configured, and then it'll show all four lights. But let's walk through the process. All right, so first we're going to launch the Smart ESS app. SmartS. All right, now here we can log on. You do want to go ahead and create an account, but it's not necessary at the moment. So what you want to do is click the Wi-Fi configuration option in the bottom center there. Now when we do this, it shows me I'm currently connected to my network. And then what's weird is that you saw that the QA number appeared and then went away. So we want to be able to see that again and actually point our phone to that so it's not connected to our local Wi-Fi. So we're going to connect to that access point. So we'll click on the link to the system connection, which is just another way of showing you your phone's available Wi-Fi networks. And you'll see here I've got one that starts with QA, and that happens to correspond to my Wi-Fi module. So I'll select that. It's going to give me a little note that it doesn't have internet connection. That's fine. I don't need it for this. And I'm going to go ahead and back out with my back button. And then once we see at the top there where it says connection ready to the QA network, then we can proceed. Now I want to hit the network setting button at the bottom, the green network setting. All right, and this is where I tell this how to connect to my Wi-Fi network. So I'm going to go ahead and type that in real quick. And this might be case sensitive, so just be aware of that. And I would highly recommend double checking your password just to make sure that you don't get this wrong, because you may not get an indication that it's wrong if you type the wrong information here, and it just will never actually work. So make sure that you got the right credentials in there. So once you've done that, I'm going to click the setting button in the upper right hand corner. Now it's going to reboot the Wi-Fi module, and the button, their little LEDs will change here. I don't know if you can make that out from there, but it's going to reboot and reconnect to my home Wi-Fi. And then I'm going to go ahead and confirm it here. And then I'm going to back out because it's going to reconnect my phone to my local network. I'm going to back out here. and go back to the login screen. So this is where, if you haven't already created an account, you would need to create one. And then what you're going to want to do is go ahead and log in once you've done that. So I'm going to go ahead and click login. And you can see it opens up to the device view. We don't actually want to do anything. At the top, you see a little input device name or serial number. We actually don't want to do that. We're going to go to the data logger, which is the second one over to the right on the bottom, and go to the data logger screen, which is also not currently populated. You see the little plus sign in the upper right hand corner? We'll click the plus sign. In the very top field, it's looking to input the data logger part number, which is basically that QR code. So we're going to click the little scan button on the right there. It'll probably ask for permissions. There we go. I've already given mine permission, so I'll scan the QR. And all that does is key in the QA number, serial number for me. Now I'm just going to put in a couple of key information. You notice the ones with the asterisks. I'm going to put a 3 in here for 3 kilowatts, which is the capacity of my inverter on this unit. And then it also wants my address. Now I don't have to put in my correct address. It just wants some data in here for whatever reason. So I'm just going to type in a bogus address. All right. And then that's all that's really required. The rest of this is optional. You can put your country in. You can give yourself a name. And then that's about it. I'm going to click the complete button on the top. And you can see here the green icon, the large green icon, has a little bit of like an antenna coming off and pointing to the left. That is actually representative of the Wi-Fi module and is not actually the device that we're collecting data from. So that will be added underneath that at some point. This is where people get confused, certainly where I got confused. Basically, I was trying to get it to add this unit. Well, that actually happens automatically, but it doesn't happen right away. So at this point, if I click on device at the bottom, you'll see that there are no devices listed. I can swipe down to refresh, and it's not going to refresh right away. I can go back to data logger, and I can swipe down to refresh. And if it were going to show me the device here, it would pop up as a separate green icon underneath the one that's already there. And then that would show me that it has added this, this hybrid inverter charger to its available device list. But that's not showing up yet. It will show up eventually. You just have to be patient. At this point, you just have to know that the app is set up correctly. Give this thing some time. It might take 5 minutes. It might take an hour. I don't know, but it will eventually populate. And once you see in the device list on this main page here, the main device page, you'll see a representation it's currently blank, but it will show up as a green icon. And when that does, you'll be able to click on it and then use the app like I showed you previously. So that's how you set up the app in the Wi-Fi module. They don't cover that in the manual very well, so if you get tripped up on that, hopefully this helped you. All right, so let's talk about the app. I'm going to kind of put some video up here so you can see what the app looks like while I'm talking. But the app requires you to sign in to an account when you do the login, and it always pops that up whenever you launch the app. But it's a read-only app, so you don't really have to worry about somebody kind of hacking your account and then going in and messing with your settings, remote controlling your charger inverter. But that also means that you can't really configure the inverter charger from the app. You can just view the various inputs and outputs. And you can do this not just from your home network. You can do this virtually anywhere where you have a network connection to your phone. So that's very cool. If you're out at the store, you're off doing something else and you want to check back and see how your solar system is performing, you can do that from virtually anywhere. And you can see here it's got some trends and historical data that gives you access to some of the basic analysis tools that help you optimize your setup. And it gives you a chance to kind of understand what your peak load times are, maybe what your cumulative solar power generation is, things like that. Now, I do have a couple of annoyances with the app that I'll tell you about. One of them is, as you probably saw, it's a little tricky to get set up. The other thing is that the data that you see in the app can be up to 4 or 5 minutes old because there is a lag there. So, if you are running a load and then you stop that load and then you look at the app to see what it's doing now, it may still show the load running for a few minutes because there is a several minute delay in the data updates from the unit to the app. So it's just something to be aware of. The other thing that I found a little bit annoying is that unless you have a battery bank BMS setup that is compatible with a connection to a unit like this to be able to allow the charger inverter to talk to the battery's BMS, the only way it really knows your battery state of charge is to basically look at the voltage, which is not a very precise way with lithium iron phosphate in particular or lithium batteries in particular, because it has such a flat discharge curve. There is a dramatic difference in the state of charge between, let's say, 13.2 volts and 13.3 volts, for example. So the software does kind of an okay job. I think if you really want to use or if you really want a tool to be able to accurately monitor your battery voltage on a small system, it's probably just better to add a smart shunt like the Victron one that I have. But that will give you an accurate way, because what that smart shunt does, instead of relying on battery voltage, when you calibrate it and you tell it is full, as long as it knows what the battery capacity is, it actually monitors all of the amperage going in and out of the battery, and so it knows what the change in the amp hours really is over time, and it can give you an accurate state of charge from that. So that's a more accurate way of doing it than the way this particular app provides it. Now, that said, there are more polished apps out there for monitoring systems like this than the one that this one uses, but it does get the job done and does give you the essential information, and I really don't have any complaints other than those minor annoyances that I mentioned. All right, just to give you a quick rundown of how I'm using this all-in-one hybrid inverter, is I've got a ProTrans 6-circuit manual transfer switch here that is wired into my my main breaker panel here. And so I've selected 6 different circuits that I want to be able to manually move off of grid power and onto solar power or battery power to another system with the flick of a switch. So right now I've been running my furnace off this thing for quite a number of days now, and it's been very cool to be able to use it like this. So let's take a look at the menu system and kind of see how all that works. All right, now I'm going to use the manual for reference here, because this is a little bit of a cryptic interface, but once you get used to it, it's actually not that bad. So just looking at the display, you can see that I'm currently running off of battery power here, and we are running off of DC. That's the one on the top, and we're powering loads through DC. That's how it's currently set up. You see we're running on inverter here. The inverter is flashing. If this is solid, that means we are running on AC. When the battery is charging, you'll see the charge indicator here lit, and you'll also see a little charging underneath this on the LCD screen. Now, there are 4 main buttons here. There's a set button, an enter button on the other side, and then up and down are in the middle. So if I want to start playing with parameters here, I can go ahead and hit set. It'll take me into the parameter setting. This is just, you can escape out of this. Parameter 00 is nothing in particular. So if I go up to parameter 1, this allows me to set up my output options. So I have it set on SBU right now, which is inverter priority mode, where it will switch to the grid power only when the battery power is not sufficient to power the load. So once I hit that set point, it'll switch over to grid power and handle it that way. So if I wanted to edit this, I would go to enter, and then I could edit here. This is solar priority mode, so it'll try to run all of my outputs through solar. And if solar is not sufficient, then it will go to battery power instead. And then there's UTI, which is utility mode, and that's basically like you're going to use it as a backup system. So it'll run on utility, and if the power goes out, it'll automatically switch over to inverter power and use the battery from there on out. All right, now that I got the output priority assigned, that UTI or utility, so we're going to find out what happens when I disconnect power from AC, and so the bypass will have to switch over. Now, supposedly it does this in 10 milliseconds, so it should basically act as a functional UPS. So let's test that and see if it actually works. And as you can see, I've removed the battery out the bottom, so if we lose power on this thing, we'll know it immediately. It's not going to have any buffer from the battery since I removed it. And we'll see it reboot. So we're going to find out if this UPS actually works. So this is the AC input to the inverter. Now we should hear the inverter probably alarm. It'll probably give us a beep when we do pull the power, but this will simulate a power outage. Keep your eye on the laptop. So let's give it a shot. 1, 2, 3. All right, the laptop did not shut down. So that's a good sign. Now this is finally telling me, hey, I had to switch modes, but the laptop never even blipped. And just to prove it to you, this is the laptop connection. If I pull the power off this, you can see the laptop goes off immediately. So that's what would happen if the UPS mode didn't work. it obviously kept running, and we're good. So UPS mode confirmed. All right, so let's quickly just wrap up on this. This hybrid inverter was so much easier to install, so much faster to install than this sort of modular component system, because it doesn't require all the extra planning in terms of what fuses do you need, all the little extra cabling that you need. Now you do have to wire an outlet, so there is that, and you do have to have some kind of a fuse or breaker here, two-pole breaker preferable. And this particular one that I installed is spec'd to the recommendations of the manual, but it's not exactly the one. You can use any variety that kind of meets that spec. Speaking of the manual, this manual that it comes with is actually very good. Now, it's not the easiest thing to read, but it's reasonably well done and does a very good job of explaining all of the many parameters that you can program in this particular charger inverter. So it makes that setup pretty well. In fact, I'll put a graphic up here. If you've got lithium batteries, you can see it's got some recommendations for lithium iron phosphate versus ternary lithium. And lets you kind of see what some good starter values are. But I would recommend that you look at your manufacturer's recommendations, your battery manufacturer's recommendations on what those settings are. So for example, if you have 12-volt batteries like I'm using here from Power Queen, I would use the Power Queen recommendation for, say, the low voltage disconnect, and I would just double that number and use that number here in my 24-volt system, since that's what I've got set up here as my low voltage disconnect, rather than the value that they recommend. Another quick clarification, I think I previously mentioned that that this unit can accept up to 1400 watts of solar input. That's actually 1600 watts of solar input. The manual actually, I think, is wrong on that, but I'll put a little graphic up here. You can see the spec on the side of the unit. It is 1600 watts, which makes a little more sense to me based on the voltage constraints. And it does accept up to a voltage open circuit VOC rating of up to 100 volts. Not 80, that 85 limit that I mentioned before was not the open circuit rating. The 100 volts is the open circuit rating. So just be aware of that. So I think this product from SunGoldPower is definitely worth a look. And I think pricing wise, it's very competitively priced. And I do have a discount code after all. So they did provide me a discount code. I'll leave that in the description below if you want to go check that out. And again, I'm not sure if that applies to the Amazon listing or just from SunGoldPower website. So you might want to check both places to see where you can get the best deal and then proceed accordingly. So anyway, that's about all I got for you. If you found any of this helpful, I really would appreciate a thumbs up on the video. It really does help. Consider subscribing if this is the kind of content that you're into. Got more of this coming. So I do hope to see you in the next one. And until then, have fun out there.